Waiting for the thumbs up.
All right, you are now live.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So welcome, everyone. We'll call the meeting to order. I'd just like to acknowledge that it is 4:30, 4:40 actually. And I'd like to also just remind people that this session is being video and audio recorded, and it's also being live streamed. Just to again remind people that the regional municipality here in Halifax is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people, and the municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we're all treaty people. So let's just do a brief roll call. If you can just shout out or raise your hand. So hi, everybody. Jackie Gahagan here, Chair. Hannah is our vice chair. Hannah is there.
Yep, I'm here.
Great, thanks, Hannah. Councillor Lovelace.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent will be joining us in a little bit. Sonia is not able to join us.
Sonia has not joined the meeting yet.
Okay, and Liz is running a little bit late, but Liz will be joining us in a bit. Rhiannon.
Here.
Thank you. And Cheryl, thank you for your patience, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you for helping me deal with my technical issues. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks. And Zoe. Thanks, Zoe. We have regrets from Cheryl and from Doreen. And we also have staff with us, Amy, Bailey, Carla, Elizabeth. Again, thank you to the support staff for all that you do to help these meetings go as smoothly as possible and all the work that you do in between our meetings. If we can move on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from May 27th, 2024. Are there any errors or omissions to those minutes? Okay. Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 27th? I need a.
All motion.
Okay. Rhiannon, thank you. And seconded by.
I can second.
Thanks, Hannah. Okay, so the minutes of May the 27th will be approved as circulated. I so move.
So you can just call for the question for the approval of the minutes.
Okay, so all in favor?
Hi.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain just because I wasn't at the last meeting.
Okay, thanks, Cheryl. So we'll make a note of that. Cheryl is
Sorry,
abstaining.
I just wanted to interrupt. Unfortunately, in this, you can't abstain, and abstain would be a vote against.
Okay.
You can
So
vote in favor, you can vote against.
I'll vote in favor of the minutes.
Okay. Thanks, Cheryl. Okay, so that motion is carried. We can move on to item number 3, approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Are there any additions or deletions? Elizabeth? Oh, sorry, I see Councillor Lovelace, your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to move up the 9.2.2 Regional Council update to before the 9.1. That way I can give everyone kind of an overview of the last 2 council meetings.
Okay.
That's okay. Thank you.
We're all in favor of that, yes?
Yes.
Right. Hi, Liz. Thanks for joining us. Hope you have some air conditioning or cooling where you are.
Sorry, I was late. No, Jackie, I don't. I'm hot stuff today.
Hot stuff. Thanks, Liz. Thanks for joining us. So Liz, I don't know if you heard we're moving 9.2 up above 9.1. Were you there for that? Okay, good. So that has been accepted as amended. Are there any other items? No? Okay. All righty, so we'll keep moving along. There are no other additions or deletions, so we'll, I'm assuming, Elizabeth, we're good?
Yeah, so there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office. So now you would just call for a motion to approve the order of business as amended. So the motion will be that the agenda be approved as amended.
Okay, so that the,
And we'll need a mover and a seconder for that as
right,
well.
so
I'm
the
happy,
agenda,
Madam Chair.
sorry. Councillor Lovelace, you are moving that?
I'm happy to move that. Sure.
Thank you. Seconded by,
I'll second that. This is Cheryl.
thanks, Cheryl. So all in favor of the agenda as amended? Okay.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, okay, great. So the motion carries. Item number 4, business arising out of the minutes. There's none. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
That's correct.
Thank you. And we are on item number 5. So there's call for declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? No. Okay, so there are no conflicts of interest to declare. Thanks, everybody. If we can move on to item number 6, consideration of deferred business. There's none. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
That's correct.
Thank you. Item number 7, correspondence, petitions, and delegations, 7.1. Are there any?
No correspondence has been received by the clerk's office and no petitions have been received.
Terrific. Thanks very much, Elizabeth. No petitions. And 7.3, there's no presentations. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
That's correct.
Thank you. Number 8, information brought forward. There's none. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So we're moving on to reports, discussions, item 9. So we'll move right to 9.2 and turn the floor over to Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, everyone, for this opportunity to give you an update on the last 2 council meetings. I'm sure that you've seen in the media, there's been a lot of activity. In May, we had public hearings on the Housing Accelerator Fund. And in early June, June 4th, we had a very, very long discussion at council about a strategic approach to homelessness and what it is that the municipality can do more of in order to address homelessness. And it's a long, long list. I won't read it all to you. You can certainly go to the June 4th meeting to get all of the details. But what I wanted to bring forward today was just to provide an overview of the importance of the municipality working with the provincial government to address the needs for support for those individuals living unhoused in HRM that are experiencing the highest acuity. And by the highest acuity, I think it's important to understand that when someone doesn't receive, let's say, the medication or the support or mental health support or addiction support, they end up in a situation where they can't be housed. And so part of the issue with emergency shelter situation is that people, in a sense, are warehoused, right? They're all together in these shelter situations. And for folks that are experiencing high acuity, that is not a good situation for them. They need to have supportive housing, transitional housing, private spaces where they can receive the support that they need. So HRM is requesting from the provincial government that there's an acceleration of installation of pallet shelters, and those shelters are individual shelters. And in addition to that, HRM is looking to create more spaces, more available spaces on public land, potentially private land, working with the provincial government, federal government defined land that's available for more of these tiny home and tiny shelter type spaces to be able to create a community where folks have the privacy. And so people who are inside shelter spaces or people who are unhoused and experiencing highest acuity can actually get into a shelter space and have some privacy and get the supports that they need. In addition, we're looking for funding from the provincial government and ways that we can prepare now to have shelter spaces and housing for the winter. And the trajectory of numbers of those experiencing homelessness are going up. And it's one of those situations where, you know, we can't go fast enough in order to address the crisis in homelessness right now. We're also opposed, Council is opposed to the no encampment approach, and that approach was recommended by staff, actually saying, you know, that people who are in tenting in parks would potentially be moved, but Council rejected that approach and felt that a no encampment approach did not meet our needs whatsoever. So we are looking from a compassionate approach to find a collaborative means to work with the provincial government to increase housing. So it's a long conversation that took place on June 4th at Council. And at the end of the day, you know, this work will continue and you will see more and more conversations at Council. Jumping ahead to our June 18th meeting, I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the emergency management. One of the things we continue to hear from families in particular is that they're really concerned about escaping a wildfire or getting out of their community due to lack of emergency egress and overall what appeared to have been a lack of coordination. So HRM has been working very, very closely with all of our business units and the Department of Emergency Management at the province, and HRM conducted a very thorough document review to look at every single business unit from business continuity, emergency management, to get a better sense of where the gaps are so we can fill those gaps. In addition, and I'm sure you saw this in the news, we had a very long conversation, thorough conversation about the Windsor Street Exchange redevelopment project, and Council opted to move forward with more dedicated bus rapid transit lanes, more dedicated pedestrian cyclist pathways, and ensure that when we're spending this money to create a better means for people to get through, we're not just prioritizing vehicular traffic, but we're focused on also creating a complete community that includes pedestrian, cyclists, walking, rolling, and ensure that we have dedicated bus rapid transit lanes. We also talked about illegal dumping, which continues to be a problem everywhere in the municipality. And in particular, it can create quite an unhealthy situation for families, for pets, and just for our communities in general. And we had a request to actually look at vegetation management on our trails and walkways. What we're finding is as those trails become more overgrown, they become less safe. And so, especially for this committee, I just wanted to raise the issue about the importance of looking at those pathways from a safe perspective, because it's difficult to see people or to see where you're going or to see who's there if you can't see past all of the vegetation. So Council moved forward to getting a much better coordinated approach to addressing the vegetation management on trails and walkways. And I also wanted to let you know, because this has been in the news quite a bit, HRM is working with Halifax Water to address the septic disposal concerns with the malfunction that's happened in the West Hants facility. And we continue to get calls. In particular, I've been getting more calls from women who are concerned about the safety of their home, methane gas, the smell of septic coming into their house because they can't get their septic cleared because there is no place for the septic haulers to actually go. So hopefully we'll have a resolution, to a short-term resolution. But at Council on Tuesday, we did request that the provincial government and the municipality, and Halifax Water, everybody actually work together to find a long-term solution. Because as we continue to build out in suburban and rural communities, this will continue to be a problem, and it needs to be addressed. Oh, and the other thing is, for anyone who travels on Highway 101, you'll see the difficulty of that, the Sackville Manor Mobile Home Park that's on one side of the Sackville Cross Road and the old Sackville Road. And it's very difficult for people to get to the mobile home park. And So we talked about, we approved moving forward with in a collaborative manner with the provincial government, actually get some kind of pedestrian walkway so that people at that mobile home park can actually easily cross the highway, Highway 101 to, get to the grocery store, to take their kids to school or what have you. This has been a very unsafe situation for decades, so it's nice to see this finally being addressed. Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks very much, Councillor Lovelace. And I just wanted to recognize that Sonia has joined us. Thanks, Sonia, and welcome. Can we also hear anything from Amy or Bailey? Any updates that you wanted to share at this point?
So sorry to interrupt, Chair. We do have another item on the agenda after the Regional Council update 911, which is an update that Amy's delivering.
Okay.
But of course, go ahead if any members have questions about the update that they just received.
Right, thank you for that. So any questions, comments for Councillor Lovelace at this point? So I'm going to go through my speakers list then and randomly pick on people. And so Liz, over to you first for any questions that you might have for Councillor Lovelace's report.
That doesn't feel random to me, Jackie, but no, I'll spare you all.
Thanks, Liz. Hannah, any questions or comments?
No, I'm gonna go back and listen to the thing before I make any questions or comments. But thank you, Councillor Lovelace.
Thanks, Hannah. Sonia, and I'm not sure how much of Councillor Lovelace's reporting out you heard, but any questions or comments that you have based on what you did here?
Sonia is saying in the chat that she can't turn her video or mic on right now. She's saying no questions. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sonia. Cheryl, over to you, please.
Yeah, I was just wondering, the council was opposed to no encampment approach. Has there been more discussions about how they're going to proceed with that? I'm just kind of curious because I know we do have some Indigenous people living in some of the encampments currently or in different areas around the city. So I was just wondering if you could expand on that a little.
Oh, thank you. So we're not moving forward with the no encampment approach. And so we're working with our service providers, navigators, and so on to provide support and ensure that individuals have access to the information that they need and they're able to ask questions to get a sense of where they can go for support. And so while we understand that some of those encampments, in particular, University Ave is one that's becoming extremely unsafe. The work that's being done with the Department of Community Services, the Department of Addictions, Mental Health, is helping staff who are on the ground actually access better resources for the folks who need it and help them navigate through to access those resources. And so I can't speak specifically to, I guess I can't really speak specifically to the Indigenous support other than I know that the Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center is fully engaged and, we're excited about supporting them in their work to develop the new facility. And at the same time, recognize that we are doing our best to support families as well when we discover families who are in need. We also are requesting that people call 211 to actually get on the list for help and community supports. And we also recognize that there are some people who do not have ID, for example, which is kind of holding back some of the process to actually accessing some of these supports. So the Department of Community Services is working with Access Nova Scotia and Service Nova Scotia and so on to facilitate that process to make sure that people who need support are not being held back because of documentation or lack of documentation.
Okay, thank you so much for the extra additional information.
Thanks, Cheryl. Great to see you.
See you as well.
Rhiannon, you're next on my speakers list. Any questions or comments?
No, but thank you, Councillor Lovelace.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Zoe, over to you, please.
I have no questions, but good to see the progress we're making. Thank you.
Councillor Lovelace, I had a question about the sort of harm reduction backlash that's happening nationally and the implications that has for how HRM is able to sort of counter that narrative. In other words, there's lots of rescinding of policies and procedures around harm reduction. I would argue that safe, affordable, stable housing is, as you pointed out, a key strategy to provide the supports needed for people who may have addictions, mental health, or other issues that are leading to precarious housing situations. So can you talk a little bit about how HRM is approaching the harm reduction kind of narrative that's currently out there?
So thank you for asking that question. We're pleased that the provincial government is joining HRM and creating a safe space actually during the day. Because what we were finding is that, people would have a shelter to go to at night, and then they're essentially kicked out during the day. And so that causes a lot of harm, a lot of stress, and people don't necessarily know where to go, and it's very insecure, obviously, when the weather's really bad and unhealthy. So the provincial government did commit to providing funding to work with HRM. So now it's just a matter of determining where that space is, what it looks like. And also, I think you're right. I think the important piece that we need to do is that in public education and working with the Dow School of Social Work and also experts in the field who are helping guide HRM and the work that we do. We're very fortunate to have Max Chauvin and his team, where we have regular meetings with them, and we also accept presentations that are community planning and economic development standing committees, where members of the public can come and speak to us about their experience and the need for harm reduction throughout all of our various policies. In addition to that, we are also integrating training with our staff, and in particular, we do need to do a better job in public education on transit in particular. And the unfortunate situation that we're in right now is that it is very stressful for transit during congestion. People are late, they're getting on the bus, they're angry. And so what we're concerned about, obviously, is escalation and ensuring that staff have the appropriate means and resources to be supported in those kind of cases, to de-escalate. And the other thing, of course, is when it comes to substance use, public substance use, and ensuring that staff are aware of language that they're using in public settings, that we're aware of the implications of potentially, causing harm to someone without intentionally needing to cause harm. And I think that our team here at HRM has done a great job in providing the training that we need. I know that Amy could probably speak to that a little bit better than I could, but I think it has finally made its way through the bureaucracy, and by that I mean because of the fact that City Hall, recreation staff, park staff, transit staff, I mean, it has affected the entire organization, and in the sense that we have felt so helpless in being able to support people. And so incrementally, we've been able to assist and work with the provincial government and work with nonprofit organizations. We are seeing more shelters in place. We are seeing more support in place, but we also know that we have to increase the capacity. And in order to increase the capacity, I truly believe we have to have a much more firm approach to harm reduction in order to help people understand why we're doing this work. Because there has been, you're right, there has been a public backlash, and there has been a lot of negativity and a lack of compassion in some of the language and communications and the calls that go into talk radio, for example, and helping people understand the why It's a sad reality when you're in an economic and affordability crisis like we see ourselves right now, that many people that we know could be one paycheck away from losing their property or losing their housing or be in a situation where they've lost their job due to sickness. So, I think it's important for us to continue that conversation. And I wonder actually, Madam Chair, if it might help to have a more thorough conversation with our team in housing and homelessness to talk about reduction from an organizational perspective and look at ways that we could do that better.
I know that's great. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Lovelace. And it'd be great to have a presentation on this going forward to the committee. And I think one of the key issues from my perspective is how well have the National Housing Strategy dollars actually been distributed, and is there some sort of prorating so that recognizing that Nova Scotia and other communities in the Atlantic region suffer worse, health and social outcomes, higher burden of chronic disease, etc., homelessness. So kind of a series of factors that contribute to the homelessness issue. And the National Housing Strategy, as you know, has two key priorities. One is to improve housing affordability, and the other is to reduce homelessness nationally. And I think it would be really interesting, although it might be somewhat of a stretch because we're talking about HRM, we're not talking about the entire province of Nova Scotia, but there's I think a need to understand how we are benefiting or not from the National Housing Strategy on those two key priorities.
I think that's a great idea. And considering we have half the population in the province, I think it's a worthwhile, excellent. We should do that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that, Councillor Lovelace. Okay, so we're going to make a note of that we'll have a presentation on housing and homelessness at one of our future meetings. And the idea is to bring our gender lens to that conversation and look at what are the implications for women and issues of gender equity. Great. Thanks very much, Councillor Lovelace. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're bouncing back in our agenda to 9.1. Am I correct, Elizabeth?
Yeah, no, that's correct.
9.1. Okay.
9.1.1.
Right, so update on combating Islamophobia and improving the safety of Muslim women and girls report. And we'd like to invite Amy to provide an update. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Jackie. And yeah, thank you, everyone. So this is just a short update. I wanted to, we agreed that I would speak to it just because there are so many new members on the committee that it would be a good opportunity for us to bring it forward. And if there were any conversation or questions that we could address those. So for folks who are new to the committee, this report, which you would have seen attached in the meeting package, was a report that arose from a motion that originally came from the Women's Advisory Committee to look at what the municipality could do to contribute to combating Islamophobia and supporting the safety of Muslim women and girls. And so the report, once it was completed, went through Executive Standing Committee where it was approved. And then in April 9th, it went to Regional Council where it was also approved at Regional Council. And Councillor Lovelace had been involved in bringing forward the motions around that, and the committee here had been involved in kind of, Haneen Al-Noman, a member of the committee at the time, had done a presentation around sort of the pieces that she felt needed to be included in that work. So very much a product of the work and the discussions and dialogue that happened here at the committee. And so you folks can see the full report attached to the meeting package, but I will just sort of point out the next steps. So this was a recommendation report, and so there are 3 recommendations that were approved when this was approved at Regional Council. The first is to strike a working group of municipal staff to create an action plan to combat Islamophobia and improve the safety of Muslim women and girls, incorporating findings from the staff report. direct staff to explore potential sources of funding from provincial and federal government to support this work, and then staff to return to regional council to provide a supplementary report to update on progress and any resources required for implementation. Myself and Carla and Bailey are working on pulling together the response to those recommendations. And we're also thinking through how this work intersects with some of the other core parts of our work, both in diversity and inclusion and in the Safe City and Safe Public Spaces program. So another report that had sort of evolved from a motion at the Women's Advisory Committee was focused on race and gender-based data and improving the safety of Asian women and non-binary residents in the municipality. And while each of those reports have distinct insights and recommendations that were shared by folks from those respective communities, there is also a lot of opportunity for us to be combining our efforts to be looking at hate and discrimination and how that particularly impacts a diversity of women and non-binary and gender diverse folks in the municipality. So Carla is also working on a women gender equity strategy that has been a product of the work that Bailey has done and other staff members that have been involved in that. So we're trying to figure out how we move forward these distinct pieces that are called for in the recommendations of this report, while also making sure that this work is represented in the other pieces of work that we're doing. So that's kind of the update on that front. And yeah, open to any questions or comments.
Thanks very much, Amy. We'll start with our first on the speakers list. That would be you. Zoe, if you've got any questions or comments that you'd like to share with Amy.
I don't have any comments or questions at the time.
Thanks, Zoe. Cheryl, any comments or questions?
I just like to thank you guys for the report. I had an opportunity to read through it and it was very well done, and thanks for the update. I appreciate it.
Cheryl. Rhiannon, over to you, please.
No questions, but thank you for your work.
Liz, over to you.
As always, this is great work and I really love it. I feel a little hesitant to say it, but I think I'm probably going to. Sorry and thank you. This one's a tough needle to thread, so stick with me, friends. Standing on its own is the statement that it is very important to combat Islamophobia. Standing on its own is the statement that it is very important to combat anti-Asian racism. Then we can add a totally different statement that says we don't want to have any forms of discrimination, hate, or racism, etc. Did you know that Jewish people are the target of the most hate crimes motivated by religious difference in Canada? Did you know that hate crimes directed against Jewish people accounted for 67% of all religiously motivated hate crimes in Canada, according to the most recent Statistics Canada report, versus 13% for Muslims? Obviously, we can say whatever we want to say about that police reported piece. Obviously, there's going to be reporting biases that accord with various pieces of discrimination and institutional mistrust. So we should always see that police reported piece as very important. But if you look at every hate crime that was reported in Canada in the last reporting period, which we only have numbers up to 2022 right now, the only people who reported being victims of more hate crimes than Jewish people were Black people. And that's like ethnicity, race, religion, everything. I wonder why we don't have a public communication or public conversation about anti-Semitism. I know this is a really touchy issue right now. This is an especially touchy issue if you live on the political left most of the time, which I do. And I would really like to keep that as separate as possible from any political implications. I think we don't need to get into that. But if we have decided that it's appropriate to invest HRM resources in exploring the impact of Islamophobia, I wonder if we could consider whether it's appropriate to explore the impact of anti-Semitism, which does seem to be of a different order of magnitude. Frankly, it's the one religiously motivated hate crime component that continues to rise year over year without stopping. And I would bet that when we see the 2024 numbers, woohoo, we might even be number one. So I just wanted to say that out loud because there aren't a lot of venues to say that. So I'm just kind of representing. And I'll just leave that out there, and I'll accept all the hate mail I'm going to get later.
Great. Thank you for that. I appreciate that, Liz. I appreciate your honesty and your candor on the issue of anti-Semitism. It is a huge issue, obviously not just in HRM, but around the world, and it is a growing concern. So, you know, I think the sort of, you know, hate crime piece is the focal point, and you're right. So, you know, if we're concerned about hate in all of its forms, then why are we not paying attention to anti-Semitism with greater specificity? So point well taken. I don't know, Amy, if you wanted to respond to that. And I see that there's Sonia's also put something in the chat for folks, and there's a link to a report there as well. Amy, over to you if you wanted to respond.
Yeah, thanks, Jackie, and thanks, Liz. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's a balance that you know, of course, we've learned a lot through being directed from the committee to come back with a focus on having engaged with these two particular populations. But the work that we do through reports is not the only work that kind of guides our work as the Offices of Diversity and Inclusion and Community Safety. And so, you know, we're also looking at I think that's part of the work we're trying to do with the Women and Gender Equity Strategy, and looking at how do we maintain the specific and nuanced experience of a variety of communities and populations, including Jewish communities in Halifax. So maintaining the sort of like uniqueness of our responses, but also recognizing that the same roots that are the root of all types of discrimination, hate. And so I think we're trying to look for opportunities, for example, like if we were to do a public education campaign, which came through in both of these reports as something that other municipalities are doing and that community members would like us to do. Our hope would be to look at how do we also represent the other types of discrimination and hate that people are experiencing. So that's not a perfect answer, Liz, but it's just to say that just because we haven't had a specific report, which you know, these reports did come through motions from the Women's Advisory Committee, and so that's where we've taken our direction on those two. But it's not to say that because we haven't had a report on anti-Semitism that wouldn't be included in some of the responses that are more about that. So yeah, and then it would be up to the committee to discuss whether specific work should be put forward in a motion for a report for working alongside folks to combat anti-Semitism.
Great, thanks very much, Amy. Sonia, you're next up on the speakers list, and I'm assuming you still don't have the capacity to use your microphone. Okay. So we'll move on to, I think Councillor Kent is with us. So Councillor Kent, over to you for any questions you might have for Amy.
Thank you. I have none at this moment. I'm driving and I thought I would just do that. But I do agree with the last speaker that, and I thought of that when we were in council, and I didn't speak to it. It kind of went quite quickly, but I think we need to find ways to be inclusive in that way around what work we do. So I was pleased to hear, Amy, how you stated it. I hope that you guys can hear me. I know the wind's blowing on me in here and my air conditioning, but yeah, that I'll leave it there, but I think it is absolutely bang on for what we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kent. Councillor Lovelace, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. So I agree with the comments that Liz made. I do think that there's an opportunity for us to bring the Jewish community together, specifically to look at this in the way that we brought together Muslim women to do this. And I can't remember, Amy, if it was over a 12-month period or an 8-month period or something where various different conversations took place, but it wasn't just a one and done kind of thing. So, this report, there was a lot of time and energy and community building and trust building that went into this report. And I think that it absolutely would be a great motion list to look at this from an anti-Semitic perspective, but in particular, to find ways that we can build bridges and create linkages with Jewish women and find an opportunity, to, in a sense, what my experience with this report was that it brought Muslim women together. And I'm still, going to the Eid al-Adha actually on the weekend at the Halifax Commons, and a woman who engaged in this came up to me and talked to me, and it was important for them to have this opportunity and this connection with the municipality, but also with each other. It's a great opportunity for community building.
Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Hannah, over to you, please, for any comments or questions.
Thank you. Yes, Amy, thank you for the presentation and the information. It's very useful to hear. I think it demonstrates what the reports and the motions can do, and I do agree with Liz. And Liz, never hold back your comments. We love them. They're important.
Oh, Hannah, you're so kind. Do you know that's the first time I've ever publicly admitted to being Jewish in a public way?
I'm proud of you.
That'll tell you where we're at with anti-Semitism. So thanks for your support, everybody.
Yeah, given the political climate that we're in right now, I do think that this could be should be a very important motion that we can curate as a group. So I will leave it at that. I also just want to do a quick reminder. I do have a hard out at 5:30, so I will be popping off then.
Great. Thanks very much, Hannah. Appreciate that. And thank you again, Liz, for your comments. And I think, from my perspective, first of all, thank you, Amy, for a really powerful piece of work. It was really an important piece of work, and I'm very grateful for that. I did want to follow up on the idea of looking at anti-Semitism and linkages to women-specific hate crimes. And so, I know there's some data that allows you to get a little bit more granularity about, is this being driven by misogyny as the underlying current, or is it being driven by religious discrimination? So it might be a conversation that we can have at a later date, but I think what Liz is getting at is, the fact that there is a significant issue around anti-Semitism. I obviously that's going to affect women's health and well-being, including in HRM. So it sort of begs the question, is there something else we can do in looking at hate crime data, specifically, how this impacts women from an intersectional perspective, including issues of religiosity and other belief systems that might actually lead to hate crime. So I'm not sure what the ask is at this point, and I don't know if Liz, you wanted to put a specific ask forward at this point.
No, I definitely don't. I definitely don't. I'm sweating here. So I probably don't want to be the face of a motion to allocate municipal funds. I just wanted to put it out to and I felt hesitant. It felt like an opportunity to do it, but I feel hesitant about it because I truly don't want to what about this great work that has already been done. And I tried to be really careful in my comments to say, I think the work that's already been done is so important on its own merits and stands on its own. And the only reason I brought it up now is we're talking about forms of religious discrimination while we're on the subject. But I truly I just wanted to see what people thought. And if anyone thinks it's worth doing something about, then that's great. But But boys, I can't be the face of this one, I'll tell you what.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Thanks for that. Amy, any kind of concluding comments or reflections that you have on what you've heard from the folks on the committee?
Yeah, well, just to say again, yeah, thank you for the conversation around this. And I don't think I'm the one who has all of these answers, but I think yeah, I think the intersectionality piece, and this isn't to suggest that I'm making a value statement that some of these issues deserve reports and some don't, but I do think that we do need to seriously look at intersectionality. And you know, I think our colleagues of the province are doing work at the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism around supporting municipalities to come up with equity and like anti-hate, anti-discrimination, anti-racism plans. And so yeah, it just has me thinking about how do we again best do this work so that we are addressing these like particular iterations or nuances of hate that manifest as anti-Semitism, as anti-Muslim hate, as anti-Asian hate, while also addressing how all of these pieces fit together, and how I think we need to be doing work more broadly around addressing hate and discrimination, and you know, public awareness, resources, all of these sorts of actions. So yeah, I guess that doesn't really, it's not a, I don't know what that really provides to the conversation, but just to say, yeah, I hear you, Liz, and others who have spoken on this, and thank you for bringing it forward.
And we may get into this further when we discuss the next item, which is looking at our revised 2024 work plan. So if there are no further questions for Amy at this point, can I suggest that we move on with thanks to Amy and crew?
I just wanted to invite Amy to take a look at the comment that I dropped on the chat. I'm trying to get on my laptop here. And thank you for your patience, everyone. But I did drop something on the chat that I am hopeful would be useful. And thanks for the mention around the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism plans and our plans to help municipalities and villages make plans. Yes, I'll join on the other device. Thank you.
Thanks, Sonia. Can we make sure that we don't lose that link to the report and maybe circulate the report afterwards as little homework assignment for folks? And I think it's important. And again, thank you, Sonia, for bringing that up. So really looking at the report is still overqualified and underemployed Canadian Muslim women's experiences with employment barriers and facilitators. I think it's on point in terms of the work that Amy has been doing, and I think it's worth having a look at. So thanks again for that, sharing that link, Sonia. Okay, so if I may move us along to 9.2.1. So this is a discussion about the revisions to the Women's Advisory Committee 2024 work plan. And thank you, Elizabeth, for sending that out to everybody. So you should have had a 9-pager in your attachments. And I wonder if we can have a conversation about this. And I know that we're inviting staff to speak about this before we move into some discussion, but is there any sort of immediate issues that people want to flag? Sorry, Hannah, did you have anything you wanted to add to this conversation before you leave? I know you've got exactly 1.5 minutes.
I do not have anything to add. I know that this is going to be a very full conversation, so I look forward to hearing all about it and listening to it later. Okay,
thanks very much, Hannah.
I also, sorry to interrupt, Chair. I know Bailey, you said you also have to leave at 5:30, but Bailey was also Amy and Bailey were going to speak at the beginning. Bailey, I don't know if you have a hard out at 5:30 or if you wish to speak briefly to the proposed revised work plan.
I was just speaking to Amy over Teams, and it looks like she will be good without me, but thank you for checking.
Perfect. Thank you, Bailey.
Thanks, Bailey. Okay, so back to you, Amy. Thanks for your patience as we have people dropping off. So over to you then, please, Amy.
Thank you, Jackie. And yeah, we thought it might be good to have, in discussion with like planning the agenda, we thought it might be good to have some time for myself, Bailey and Carla. I'll share on behalf of all of us. But just to sort of give some information to you folks that you might want to consider as you're looking at the work plan. So I have a few notes here that I've written down. I'm just going to pull them up for myself. Yeah, so taking a look at the draft revised work plan, these are just some things that you might want to consider. So something that I've sort of noticed the committee having discussions around, and you folks will probably have noticed this yourselves, is around the role that the committee plays and what falls within municipal jurisdiction, what falls within the committee's jurisdiction. And I think that there's been a bit of an evolution over time around the committee's feelings about wanting to be, really sort of looking at municipal, wanting to have a direct impact on municipal policies, programs, operations, bringing the lens of gender equity to what we do as a municipality. And so one thing that, and I think already in this conversation, you folks have been chatting about this, maybe becoming even more kind of specific on, for example, the areas of food and housing and homelessness. This is, I think, kind of, I may not say this properly, so have patience with me, folks, but of course we need to know what the broader context of the issues of food insecurity, housing and homelessness, and how those intersect with gender equity to sort of understand where we are as a municipality, the areas we need to be considering, what we potentially might be able to do better. But having a focus on looking at what we do as a municipality in food justice work, in housing and homelessness work, and bringing that gender equity lens. So kind of making it more specific about looking at what we're doing and bringing your folks' advice to those spaces and those policies and programs. That's one thing that you might want to consider. Another thing that sort of came to mind was a piece around mental health. And I think there's different ways of looking at this piece, but again, just some food for thought for you that maybe potentially being more specific on that topic area as well, in terms of what does the municipality currently do that touches on the mental health of folks. Because I think if it's a broad take, potentially the committee could get into a place of making recommendations that do actually fall outside of the jurisdiction of the municipality. And I think there's value sometimes to sort of highlighting some of these things. We know there's areas of work that are very, I'd say, a gray area around where the municipality and the province sort of work together, but being more specific in that area around what is it specifically that the municipality can do that touches on mental health, because if we're looking at just like traditional mental health service provision, there would be a lot that the committee wouldn't be able to influence in that realm. But of course, all of these things are very nuanced. So none of what I'm sharing with you folks is like, do or don't put it in your work plan. It's more so just things to consider. And then, yeah, really all of these, I guess the theme is like just asking you folks the question, how specific do you feel you would like to be in order to kind of have the sort of impact that you want as a committee? So I think even in the gender-based violence category of work, because there's so much that falls within the realm of preventing and responding to gender-based violence, one potential sort of route there could be, presentations to the committee from everyone at HRM that is doing some kind of work that touches on gender-based violence, and then sort of assessing like, okay, what areas are not covered and where should we be doing work, or looking at the things we are doing currently, where do we need to make changes? So those are all, again, and I'm only speaking, I know the committee is, well-versed in these things. And so it's really just kind of one piece of data for you to consider when you're looking at your work plan. And yeah, if I know Bailey had to step away, but Carla, I know I don't want to put you on the spot either, but if there's anything that you're like, I need to say this, please feel free to do that.
As usual, you've got it all down.
Okay, thanks, Carla. Yeah, so that's a few things to consider.
Mhm. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thanks for that, Amy. And I just wanted to also, if I can say something here, it just, I get it. I mean, some of it is beyond the remit of this committee or beyond the art of the possible for this committee. So we need to kind of get real and how much we can actually do, either because it's not within our remit, because it falls outside of HRM, or it's just simply not closely enough affiliated or associated with what this committee is meant to do. So totally appreciate that bit of a reality check for us, just both in terms of staff time and resource, as well as the capacity of this committee to take on all the work that's in here. So I have a couple of other things, but I'm going to stop there. And can we go to our speakers list now? And I wanted to start with Councillor Kent. Any sort of reflections you have on what you heard from Amy in particular, or direction you have regarding our revised 2024 work plan? Okay, we'll come back to Councillor Kent and we'll go right now to Councillor Lovelace, please.
Thank you. I don't think I have too much comment other than to say sometimes this job feels like we're taking a round peg and putting it into a square hole. That makes sense. And sometimes we attempt to push boundaries to create the change, and sometimes it feels a little uncomfortable, right? And at the same time, that's why we're here. So I don't know if you feel that way, but I think the work that we're doing is going to help us get it right. And I think that's why we're still here. And I don't think that that's I mean, there's process, obviously work plans should have, in the scheme of things, work plans are generally done sooner than later. But at the same time, when I consider the committee, this is a new committee, in the sense that we've got a new makeup of the committee, new members of the committee. I just feel that we need to make space at this point in time to make sure we get it right. Yeah, and thanks, Amy, for helping us do this. I appreciate it.
Very much, Councillor Lovelace. Councillor Kent, are you able to chime in with your thoughts on what you just heard? Okay, we'll move along on the list to Liz for your thoughts and reflections on what you heard from Amy and just your general sense of where we're going with our revised 2024 work plan.
Are we going to just respond to Amy now and then we're going to talk about the doc, or is this the whole thing?
No, we're responding to what you heard from Amy, and then we're going to get into the document. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it. Wait, no, now I don't know what you said. Am I just responding to Amy, or am I also speaking to the document right now in this moment?
Whatever works for you, Liz. You be you.
You know you can't let me off the leash, Jackie. That's never a good idea. I will just say, Amy, I really appreciate your comments. You're always just you're so practical, and you're so good at governance, and I'm a real governance nerd, so I really appreciate it. If we're going to get into the document itself now, she said hesitantly, feeling out the room, that I have some things to say. I have some things to say about the doc, but if people want to just heap praise on Amy for a while first, I think that's fine too. Okay. All right, well, let's get into it. So I am the author of this document, and parts of it are a prank. So the thing about the work plan as I have drafted it is that it is intended, sort of as Amy is pointing out and as Pam has picked up as well, it's intended to be a starting point for a conversation. It's not intended as a document that's ready to submit. For the newer members of the committee, I don't know if you will, well, sure you will have, because it was approved by council, so it's in the public record now. You will have the opportunity, or you may have already had the opportunity, to see the previous work plan, which is the work plan that was approved by council, and the work plan which officially governs the the work of our committee. And that work plan is, in my professional opinion, not one. So the aim of this document was to say, okay, like actually we have to answer a couple of questions. The first question is, what's our actual job? Like, what is it that we actually want to do? So the previous work plan was very focused on things like hearing presentations and learning, and had sort of framed learning opportunities for committee members as deliverables, which I can't get behind. So my aim for this document was to move us away from that idea of awareness raising as a deliverable and move us toward the idea of awareness raising or learning as an intermediate step that would allow us to deliver a deliverable. With the thought that if you're going to invest many precious life hours from all of the brilliant people of this committee, and, you know, time and, because they are paid taxpayers' money for staff time, into having us all here in this committee, we should have a good idea of like what we actually are trying to accomplish. The objectives associated with the previous work plan, which I will say I didn't do anything to change the like topics covered or the scope of it. What I did was I sort of said, okay, well, if we wanted to have deliverables associated with each piece of this scope, like let's really think about how big that work is. And let's think about whether the scale of that work matches with an hour, 2 hours a month of meeting time, plus whatever else we do on the side and whatever we direct staff to do. So that truly the goal of this document is to start that conversation and to have us thinking about it. If I were to answer my own questions that I have raised via this document, what I would say is no, it's way too big. We can't be doing this. We need to pick a theme. I think like what seems to be emerging as we're moving forward in this year of the committee is it really kind of feels like this is a rebuilding year for the team. Like it feels like we're actually really deeply engaged with questions of governance and questions of like where we want this committee to sit in the wider world of HRM Council. These are conversations that are also happening at that council level and at the staff level about the role of committees in general. So I think it's quite timely. Isn't it nice to be part of the zeitgeist? But I really think we need to be reflective about what is it that we actually want to do. And I think you picked that up very astutely, Amy, in saying like, yeah, I think there is a real desire to sort of not just be chatting about stuff, but to be asking ourselves where are the levers that we could have to actually enact change or to provide value in doing the work of municipal governance. If we want to actually do a thing, I think probably have to pick one thing. Mm-hmm. And I think, like, as you say, Amy, like, oh, when you said like, let's get everybody who does gender-based violence to do presentations and then everybody like look for gaps. What better way to spend several months of our lives? Like genuinely, that makes me feel quite happy. But that would be truly several months of committee time. Like that would be half of the committee's year, basically. So if we wanted to pick that, we could accomplish that one thing this year and we could do our very best and we could do a great job. And we could maybe do that and also do some more ad hoc, issues management stuff, right? Like we could maybe do that. And then maybe also we could review some policies that were coming before our council, or we could provide input on ongoing projects. But I think that's about the size of what we could accomplish. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that we can have that conversation today about like, number one, can we maybe just pick one thing? And number two, if we can, which one is our favorite thing to pick?
Again, Liz, I appreciate your candor and cutting to it. So I too agree that it is a huge work plan and it feels like it would be a full-time, all of us working full-time on this 40 hours a week to accomplish all that's in here. So I agree, pick one big thing that fits within the duties of the committee as per our terms of reference. So totally get that. And I am also not super keen on just presentations. I think there's other stuff that we can do and it's not to say that the presentations are not super informative and interesting. I think we can go to a portal of presentations and check to see what's happening with the conversation and get the temperature of the room that way. So I agree that the sort of levers of change and what's the value add of this group is really kind of a, an important way of framing this discussion, Liz. So thank you for that. I'm just looking at my list of speakers. Again, I'm going to go back to Councillor Kent to see if you're able to hear us and or join the conversation. And if not, we'll move on to Sonia for your thoughts and reflections, both what you've now heard from Amy and from Liz, as well as your reflections on the work plan as it was circulated.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, Councillor Kent, we can.
Hi, I don't know what's happening on my phone. Nothing looks right. But I think that Liz is bang on with how we create something to do. And this really, the way she framed it and the way that the Board of Police Commission sort of, when I first got involved with it, it took us a couple of years to get to where we actually had a functional strategic priorities kind of place with all of the actions that we want to take to get there, just to show the deliverables and allow us to as you measure the work we're doing. And so, and it does come down to one or two things, I think, for in the years that we should be focusing on. What that looks like, I'm not sure. I don't have any of the literature in front of me. I'm just going by what was just said, that I think that if we're going to have a work plan, we have to have deliverables and the journey to get to them. And we have to decide what is the very most important one that we want to achieve, and have a backup one that can be worked on maybe through some committees of like what we do. We have 7 members on Board of Police, but we have ad hoc committees when things need it. And that would be 2 or 3 members that are sort of munching on all the information and then coming back with a recommendation to the full group. So just some thoughts on that. I agree with the approach that presentations are good, but presentations maybe ought to be the way forward if it's always something related to the deliverable, right? Maybe we need to have someone, some local specialists come in and speak to something to help us move forward to where we want to get in our deliverable. So I'll leave it there. I'm sorry I couldn't participate. I just drove in my driveway now. When I say I'm done speaking, I have to press something and I don't know if I'm actually gonna be still in the meeting or what. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thanks, Councillor Kent. Appreciate your thoughts on that. Sonia, over to you, please, for your thoughts.
Hi, can you hear me clearly? Oh, does this fan next to me totally interrupt my beautiful voice? Thank you again for your patience and allowing me still join the meeting. I'm sure if Liz was writing the names of deviant members of this group, my name would be at the top.
You're worth the wait, Sonia. You're always worth the wait.
Well, thank you. I think first of all, I wanted to point out, I don't know that our chair has given permission for us to refer to them as Madam Chair. I just get weary when I hear people reference her as reference them as Madam Chair. Look at me. Yeah. But we're all on a journey, and I totally understand. I am too, as a Christian, woman in this society. There's a lot of learning, as a racialized person myself. But I just wanted to point that out because I know these meetings are being recorded, and the more respectful we can be in these conversations, the more respectful we teach society to be. I think taking off from where Liz spoke, she said something about the learnings. I do understand when we've come to that place where we feel like, and hello to all the new members. It's super nice to see everyone. I apologize, it's my first time seeing you. I will find ways to connect personally. I do, like I said, I do know that we had come to that point where it looked like learning was all we were doing. And so I do appreciate the challenge and the opportunity for us to do even more. I do not think that the learning was ever supposed to be the end of our journey every year. I think what has happened is we have not quite been, intentional enough to see that we move pieces beyond the learning phase. And like Councillor Kent said just now, it's an important piece, but then we have to also prioritize what we actually do with that learning. Speaking to picking one or picking three, I am one of those people who over multitasks. I am that person who would never pick one thing. I want to do it all. But I understand when really organized people say, let's pick one thing and focus. I do see the strength and the wisdom in that. And thanks, Amy, for all of your comments too. I see the strength and the wisdom in that, because for every single item, there's a whole array of, things that we could uncover that we don't even know at this level right now that exists. As a senior policy analyst with the Office of Equity and Anti-Racism, I'm involved with a lot of projects here and there, whether it's gender-based violence, whether it's anti-racism, but all the conversations I join is me bringing the lens as best as I can and truthfully only owning my experience, but speaking for the underrepresented and underserved, which covers so many communities, including the 2S LGBTQIA community. But what I'm trying to say is all of this work is important, but when you drill down into one item, you would see that there's so much that could be done. However, I wonder so while I lean on us picking one or two things, I wonder how we could allow community to influence what we're picking, how we can allow our Mi'kmaq and Indigenous persons and our immigrant community, like every woman represented in these groups, how we can allow them participate in what we prioritize. I know gender-based violence is a hot topic right now and the conversations and all of that, but really, is it what matters to women? Is it what matters to the underserved and underrepresented? Because they're the most vulnerable within our society right now. So that's where my head is at. I'm following everyone's comments and I'm in agreement with most of it. Yes, let's move forward. Let's do more than learn. Let's apply whatever learning we have into what we're doing. Again, also, let's be able to harness the skills in this room. I mean, there's so much wealth in this room even now that really learning is great, but we already have a lot of stuff. I mean, within the group that with all the names I can see here that we could leverage on. But I'm thinking, how do we bring the people we represent to this call right now, and how do we make sure that we're prioritizing within this work plan what absolutely matters to them? And I know it's a big ask, but I never think anything is impossible. That's where I'll shut up for now.
Thanks, Sonia. Appreciate that. I mean, I think it's a good point, the sort of, what's the top priority from the communities that are being served by HRM? And I don't want to put HRM on the spot, but here I go. Is there already kind of an evidence base that HRM can tap into and say, according to your latest data that you collect from residents of HRM, that the pressing issues, so if you kind of do your intersectional analysis of the data, that you would actually say these are the pressing issues for, as Sonia kind of points out, the sort of most underserved populations in HRM, and so that's one way to sort of get at, I think, what Sonia's suggesting. The other question is, are we the right people to weigh in on that? So just putting that out there. So I don't know, Amy, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but any thoughts on, are there, and I'm sure there are existing data sets that actually look at what are the pressing issues that are of significance to residents of HRM?
Yeah, I can share a little bit on this. I think Tracy would also be in a good position to speak on this. So potentially, getting more information from Tracy on this front as well. But it's a yes and a no, I guess. Like we do have sources of data that we regularly sort of draw on as a municipality, the resident survey being one of the sort of key, like, larger data collection projects. In terms of that data being able to be meaningfully disaggregated for the experience of women and non-binary residents, and then further disaggregated for other intersections of identity, I don't know that, well, I guess I do know that it was in the race and gender-based data report. So that is out there, that we don't have the depth of data to fully understand how different communities are experiencing and what the priorities would be. But that being said, like, HRM is such a big organization, and there are many different business units and divisions. Like, for example, I know, Cheryl, you would have experience of this, having worked with diversity and inclusion, and Carla, currently working with diversity and inclusion. Like, that team would be doing engagements with particular communities, and hearing kind of in depth from communities what some of these issues are that are most pressing. So it's yes and no. I think we have pockets of expertise and understanding across the organization who are engaging with different communities. But in terms of quantitative sort of data, we might have less, we might be able to tell less from that. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that, Amy. That's helpful. Cheryl, you are next on the speakers list. So over to you for your thoughts on this question of where should we go with our 2024 work plan based on what you've heard.
Yeah, so I had a chance to review the work plan, and I do agree it's a huge amount of potential work, because even if we were going to look at some of the existing policies, as Amy said, I know from working within the municipality, there are so many different initiatives going on that have that intersectionality with the women's lens, and that would be a whole couple meetings. I don't even know how many meetings it would take to kind of source through that information and to pull out what is significant to us. I do agree with what I think it was Sonia, is that her name? Sonia had mentioned that it's really important to kind of get that perspective from communities on what our key priority area should be as we move forward, because I'm looking at the subcategories that we have in the list, and there are some that are really, really pressing still, like food sovereignty, food security for families, living wages for employment for women, making sure that that's feasible, and so many other kind of streams that work on it. So I think we could probably do a bit of an exercise to narrow it down a bit more, but I think we need to do that extra step, and I don't know if it's through a poll or a system like that where we can engage the public to make sure that the main topics that we're working on or dedicating our time to this fiscal year, this work plan is really feeding into what the citizens of HRM need. One of the other things is kind of building off what Councillor Kent said as well, Madam Chair, or Chair, is that I think there needs to be some metrics built into our work plans as well, so we can measure and assess how we're developing and delivering our work. And I think it's just really important that we have those kind of gauges in there to measure how we're progressing, so we can evaluate ourselves as well too.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that, Cheryl. There's a bit of a theme emerging here. I want to be a cliffhanger, or I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but Rianne, over to you, please, for your thoughts and comments.
Yeah, thank you everybody else for your comments. It is very large, like I was writing it down, and it's like, assess, scan, explore, and kind of like motion to action for these 5 priorities, sub-priorities that are actually like 10 realistically, when you kind of look at them. I think it's interesting as well, thinking of like how to distill these areas down to like what's most pressing. And I think that being in touch with like community and existing needs is the way to go. But I guess how to do that is an interesting question. Yeah, I also listening to people like not just wanting presentations, but like, how does this work become meaningful for like somebody walking down the street, instead of just information in people's minds. One of the other things that I was just kind of wondering about, or two things. One is just like, what's like the general like staff capacity for this stuff? Like, where does that fit into making a plan, seeing that a lot of these like resources required is just staff time, external expertise, etc. Like, what's realistic from like a staffing or like a human perspective? And the other thing that I was wondering earlier was mentioned, I believe, that Carla's working on a strategy about, women and gender for the municipality. Is this something that would like start to influence that strategy, or does that strategy influence what we're doing here? What's that kind of relation, and how can we like use that to just like not complicate or go in different directions, but create more synergy with like work that's already going on? Yeah.
All right, thanks for that, Rihanna. So I'm gonna put you on the hot seat, Carla, and see if you might be able to answer the last question that Rihanna posed.
Well, I've had these conversations with both Amy and Bailey in terms of me being new and trying to get my brain around the work that's already been done and the work that I have to do in the future. And to me, it seems to make more sense to kind of bring this all together. And I think Amy was trying to explain what I was trying to explain. I'm not sure if it made sense to everyone, the way that I'm going to explain it and the way she explained it. But my hope for the women and gender equity strategy is that we have some commonalities for all women, and then we make sure that we are addressing the other categories of women and people, sorry, my dog, women and people with other gender identities in terms of making sure that they're safe and making sure that they're heard. And my hope is that there's a mechanism, and I think this is kind of what we're talking about, where we're being current in terms of what women and gender diverse people need in terms of services or things that the municipality can help with, and that we can actually action and do something about, rather than just continue having new reports when something new happens. So hope that answers Rhiannon's question. Yes? Okay.
Thanks for that, Carla. So, I mean, I'm also getting the sense that we don't want to duplicate efforts. There's also a staff capacity issue. There's also what are the metrics to determine whether or not we have been quote unquote successful in achieving our work plan. So there's a lot of pieces that I think we need to think about the scope and scale of what's in the current work plan and kind of maybe do some reverse engineering. Zoe, you're next on my list. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you everyone for the valuable input, and and for me it's a great learning opportunity. And I do agree with Liz that learning to a certain extent is important, but we should do focus on the desired outcome, what can be delivered. For example, I did not know, I know of anti-Semitism rising in Canada, but when I looked at the stats, it blew my mind. It just never occurred to me to focus on that, which is, just more to be more involved in and more aware. So thank you for sharing that. I know it can't be easy. I read the work plan, and I think it's very well laid out, and I don't have any specific question to the priorities or the sub priorities. I'm really new, and I just hopefully I can contribute to the actual work that we're gonna do, and to the discussions and different perspectives, and yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm on my tummy because I hurt my back, so I can't sit for long. That's why I'm changing around a little bit.
Well, thanks for joining us, Zoe, even though you're not feeling 100%, and thank you for your feedback. So I'm last on the speakers list, so I'm just gonna say a little bit more. So I'm very grateful for everybody's feedback and thoughtful comments. I too feel that this work plan is too huge. I think it's very ambitious, and I think there's lots of good content in there. But I also agree that the idea, and I think it was Liz, brought it up. It's way too big. Pick a theme, and kind of deliver on metrics that are measurable and possible to actually attribute to the work that we're trying to do as a committee. So I appreciate that. And I think that, what I heard from Councillor Kent is, find the big thing that we want to action and deliver on. So I'm hearing that as well. And I think that's pretty clear. And then what's the most important thing? And then what's your next number 2 kind of important thing that in case you can't achieve whatever that important issue is on number 1. I get it. Sonia basically said, we need to be intentional in our work and in how we prioritize what we're going to work on. And I heard from Sonia that, again, sort of pick 1 or 2 items based on community feedback. What I heard from Cheryl is that there's a huge amount of work in the plan, and it's important to get priorities from our perspectives, rather, from communities and HRM, and that metrics are needed for our work plan. So we're sort of hearing some consistent feedback. And then from Rihanna, what's the most pressing and how do we connect with community to determine whether this is where we should be putting our resources. And then also, thank you, Rihanna, and I'm sure the staff appreciate that comment about staff capacity issues and the connection to Carla's work to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts and recognizing that there's a finite amount of staff capacity to move things forward. And then, Zoe, again, sort of the work plan is well laid out. But again, from my perspective, I think it's a little bit too ambitious. I think it's a lot too ambitious. And so I would like us to sort of think about where we could focus our energies. And I again, not to put Carla on the spot, but if there is something that Carla is working on and the sort of value add to that work looks like something that this committee is mandated to do, then from my humble perspective, it makes sense to sort of hive off a piece of that and entrust it to members of this committee to do work on that. So that's kind of my take on it. I would love to hear what you have to say about that potential perspective, Carla, in terms of putting together a more realistic and doable work plan with specific deliverables that would be of value to HRM.
In working on so far on the information that I have for the gender equity strategy, I think the thing that will be most helpful with, in my opinion, to facilitate being proactive rather than reactive, so that we have actual connection to communities that we're trying to help, and that they can inform the gender equity strategy in real time. So I don't know what that looks like in terms of concrete document and being able to be kind of fluid in the way that we respond to people that need our help. But I guess that could be some of the work of this committee. Bless you.
I was hoping I muted before that came out.
You did.
Wait. So that I'm going to turn it back to Liz, who started us off with some really important comments about the, we need to think about what is it that we want to do, and kind of leaning towards our deliverables and thinking about the scope and scale of the work that we have ahead of us, which again, I'm getting the consensus that it's too much for, it's not this committee. So it's not about the cast of characters on this committee at this moment in time. It's about the fact that it's super ambitious, and it would require, I think, to be honest, all of us working on this full time. And I see, Elizabeth, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw your attention to the fact that Cheryl has indicated in the chat that she has to leave at 6:15. And once Cheryl has left the meeting, we will lose quorum. So I would recommend that this item be deferred to a future meeting of the committee.
I think that's a great recommendation because it will.
And that's if the committee wishes to revisit this topic at a future meeting.
I believe this committee will have to revisit this conversation at a future committee. And my ask is that I know you've all read what is in the draft work plan. And again, thank you to Liz for all of your hard work on that, to go through it and think about what is feasible and doable in 2024 for our work plan going forward. And I'm not trying to privilege one area or issue over all of the other issues, but we need to think about what's in play right now. So that includes Carla's work for HRM. We need to think about staff capacity, and we need to think about what are the deliverables. So I would ask that people please revisit that 9-page work plan and come back with their, kind of, well, let's concretize what we're going to be doing for the coming year at our next meeting. Okay, so do we need to do a motion on that, Elizabeth, or can we just move along?
So there are two options. Either a motion can be passed to defer the item, or the committee can agree to, when members agree to defer an item, they can also just agree to defer it without a formal motion.
Are we
So I
happy?
would say if all members are in agreement, then it can be deferred.
Okay, so can we get some thumbs up, smiles, hand waves? There we go. Whoop, whoop. So, okay, we're good. All right, so we have a friendly deferral of that motion. So you still have some homework associated with that item. And we'll get to it when we revisit this at our next meeting. So we are at added items, which there are none.
Correct. I just wanted to let you know Chair Sonia has her hand raised.
Yes, sorry, Sonia, go ahead.
No, it's okay. Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to point out, just to say a little something as we close on this item. I know that, we may or may not be able to put out a poll, a survey, or whatever to find out what the pressing needs might be. Right now in our office, we're doing the Tulsa LGBTQIA+ action plan, and that survey is, it's blowing up. So I know we might not have capacity to handle something like that. However, I feel that many times we minimize the reach and the influence that we have as people, as individuals. So, talking to 5, 10, 15 people within the community, because I love to see what's on the screen right now. This is a really diverse group. Gratefully, it stays diverse like this. Talking to the people in your circle alone can give a sense of what we should prioritize. It's not like I don't know what I could tell us to prioritize, but it's not about me. And it's not about what all the Black girls who grew up in the Black nation and moved here in their 30s think. It's not about just me, because my experience is pretty different from my Black brothers and sisters who grew up here in the 52 communities, right? So let's maximize our network in that way. With that, we really don't need to roll out a survey to analyze and all of that. And, we can manage capacity and be mindful, as well. So, but that's what I'm just inviting everyone to do. I know I will. We have a Nigerian, WhatsApp group. I have different groups like that I could ask without over disclosing why I'm asking, and get some feedback and information. And I join other communities as well. So I'll shut up again.
Well,
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sonia, for that. That's good advice. We're obviously trying not to do this work in a vacuum. So we do all live and work and play in different communities. And so it's worth tapping into that. I also think, have a look again at the work plan and just see the duties and responsibilities relative to our terms of reference, because our terms of reference will also give us direction in terms of the art of the possible. And I think it's sort of our magnetic north. So keep an eye on our terms of reference and not go too far afield. That would be great too. So We are at date of next meeting, which has July 4th, if required. Elizabeth, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is there if needed. We find with a lot of committees, some don't have many items during the summer months. So that's why we normally during the summer have a few meetings that are if required. And that's exactly what that is. It's there if the committee feels the need to meet on that date.
Can I pose something that you might not like, Elizabeth, and then you can just say no, and that will be fine, and then we'll all go eat our supper. So I was gonna say, you know, maybe we could get together on that date, but maybe change it up and like just go somewhere and eat food and drink something, maybe on a patio, and not have it record. I'm not sure I should be saying this because this is being recorded, but just, you know what I mean? Just sit down at a table informally.
Keep going,
and
Chair, keep going.
just chat and over food and just, you know, like regular people just hanging out and just like having a chat. Cheryl's got to go, or either that or she really.
I do, Jackie. I do like that idea.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
No
So
good for government. There's no good for government transparency, Jackie. It's no good. They're not going to record it.
we're having a secret meeting somewhere. We're not going to tell you where, Elizabeth. Are we allowed to do that?
So
Jackie, we're allowed to get together socially anytime we want. Like, we're all free citizens of HRM. You guys want to come over and have a backyard barbecue at my place? You're all invited.
Okay. All right, everybody, settle down. So Elizabeth, so can we?
So the committee, so all meetings must be open to the public. So the committee wouldn't be able to meet in a formal capacity outside of either a Zoom meeting or an in-person meeting. I wouldn't say that if the committee members got together outside of a meeting for social purposes, what would be advised would be that no committee business isn't discussed. But I can follow up with that with members for some more clarification.
Okay. Otherwise, we all get fired. Okay. So so we'll leave that with Elizabeth. I mean, again, it's just having a conversation where people don't feel stymied by the formality of the flow of the conversation. That's all. That's where that's coming from. So it's no disrespect to the importance of having formal meetings where people can listen to what we're talking about and find ways to contribute to that. So it's not meant to sort of diminish the importance of these formal meetings, but it's just, you know, it's summertime, and I know it's very difficult to get people together in July and August because people disappear down the holiday rabbit hole. And so I'm cognizant of the fact that we might not get quorum July 4th, but can we just put a pin in that for now, Elizabeth, because I'm going to be talking to you tomorrow about agenda setting.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Can we have a motion to adjourn?
Are we meeting on July 4th though, or are we not?
It's a cliffhanger.
Oh, okay. So exciting. Are we coming to my house for a backyard barbecue? Just let me know in advance so I can get the food.
Okay. Well, so so motion to adjourn unless Elizabeth has anything else that we need to. Okay,
Looks
so
like Liz is moving that.
Liz moved it.
No, Rhiannon was first. Rhiannon was first. I want to give her let her be the one in the minutes.
Okay,
Thank
no fighting.
you.
So Rhiannon was first, followed by Liz. It was a very quick draw. Elizabeth, anything else before we sign off?
No, the July 4th, if required meeting, that's to be decided by the chair at the agenda review.
Right, which we'll be doing tomorrow. So
Yeah,
stay tuned. It's
That
the
is all.
cliffhanger, Liz. Okay, take care, everybody. Be well. And again, thank you very much for a really important and fulsome conversation today. Really grateful. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.